We are live here again with Coffee with Humans with my new friend Claire, coming to talk about relationships. Welcome to Coffee with Humans, Claire.
Thank you so much, Jason. It's great to be with you.
Well, relationships are an interesting topic that every one of us, I think, deals with. And I think you wrote a book regarding marriage, which we'll get into a little bit later. But first, I'm curious, what inspired you to click the button to have coffee with me?
I'm always on the hunt for new podcasts, and I looked at the title and I was like, coffee, I like that. Humans, I like that. And so I thought, well, maybe we could talk about relationships and some other things.
Awesome.
You've had great guests too. I'm just a fan of your show. So
Are
let
you?
me just say,
Well,
I'm a fan of the show.
That's exciting. I'm so happy to hear that. I'm glad that it's making a difference. So I'm in Northern Illinois. Where are you located?
I live in South Florida. So near Fort Lauderdale and Boca Raton.
All right. That's
so
awesome.
It's hot like summer here now. Once you get into May, our summer has started. So we have, hot weather and super hot weather. So this is where we are now until probably September.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, we are just approaching when summer's thinking about coming. And so we came off of 2 days that were like 85 degrees, and now we're going back into the 60s.
And everybody complained, right? They're like, it's hot so early.
Well, my air conditioning decided to stop working in my car, so I was complaining a little bit. Not too badly, but yeah, it gets to be bad.
Yeah, I've spent a fair amount of time in Chicago too, and people melt. I know that you don't like a lot of heat for a long time, so I hope it warms up, but in a very comfortable fashion.
I'm certain that it will. I put my plants outside a little bit early. We had a warm spell, and then I put my plants outside, and I had to bring them back in because then we went to freezing temperatures again, and now they're all back outside. But I was trying to talking about relationships. I have this relationship with my plants where I attempt to take care of them through the season changes. And I'm not certain that I do a good job of that, but I keep trying.
That's ambitious, though. So you take care of them inside all winter, huh?
I do, and I killed two of I don't know, like there was a palm. Oh. Yeah, there was a palm, and then there was another palm, like two different types of palms, and they didn't make the transition well. I don't know if I underwatered them, overwatered them. I have no idea. I try.
Sometimes it's unknowable. It is. You can have two of the same plants, and one does well and the other doesn't, and you can try again. That's okay.
Well, it's interesting because I think it piggybacks on kind of what your book is about and what you're interested in, which is relationships, and it's knowing what each plant needs. And the differences between each plant is a sort of a complicated thing, and understanding light requirements, water requirements, temperature requirements, not shocking them, moving them from one place to the next.
Right.
It requires a bit of patience, I think, to take care of plants. And I have not always been a patient individual. I wouldn't suggest that I'm necessarily a patient individual now, but I try to. I try to care for the plants, and it does something soothing to my soul.
That's what we in the biz call a nice segue, Jason. I got it. Care, feeding, individuality, a little patience, forbearance. You're in it now. That's good. Not your first time. Oh no, I can't hear you now. I can't hear you for some reason. There we go.
It's because I changed my battery. You remember when I was running around right before the show?
Yeah.
And it was playing that video, and then you saw me like running off camera. I changed the battery in my microphone, and I didn't click it all the way in.
Oh, I've done that.
Dumb.
That's all right. That's all right.
Oh well.
But we're back
now.
It's the joy
of live productions.
It's the excitement of it. It's like being on Saturday Night Live, really. Anything can happen.
We could do a skit. I've never done a skit before.
Oh, I've never done a skit. I've never done any acting, any improv or anything. Have you?
Really?
No. No.
Oh.
No, I don't like, no, I'm a
Why?
behind the scenes kind of person.
What is
Yeah.
it that what is it that sits in your mind of why you wouldn't go out and do performance?
Everybody's staring at you, massive fear of failure. I think the usual, that kind of, when everything stops and people look, that kept me from getting married. Actually, we talked about eloping because I was like, I didn't want that moment where everybody stops and looks at me. It seemed very uncomfortable. But we
Wow.
finally ended up with a nice church wedding, very, pretty small. So, and it was fun. I got used to the idea, but I've never liked it. Have you?
Yeah, I'm some I mean, since we're digging in, some secrets about me is I'm an introvert, or more introvert. I'm sort of an ambivert, right? But to recharge, I need to go to, push all the noise out, and I need to get by
Yeah.
myself
Yeah.
and have quiet. But from a very young age, I've sang and I've performed, and so I became very comfortable in front of people, and then have
That G. Yeah.
sort of honed that craft over time, and I can do that. I can play that role very well, um, but it's tiring to me. So I don't necessarily would say I wouldn't necessarily say I thrive in that, but
Yeah.
um,
You know how to
I
turn it on.
I'm comfortable. Absolutely, totally, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's good. It's better to be that way. I mean, I don't think you should, walk around in life with all these fears and phobias. It doesn't serve you after a while.
Oh no, and it's interesting that people who don't really know me well, I've heard, I've suffered that. That's an extreme term. None of this is suffering. But I've combated the thoughts in my head about what do people think, and so sometimes when I've been out front or whatever, some people who don't know me or don't understand or have never asked, they'll be like, oh, he just wants to be out front. It's like, no, actually I don't. I just think I do it well, and people keep becoming interested, so I'm just trying to do that well.
Mm-hmm.
And in the meantime, I'm just thinking, I combat the thing. It's like, oh my gosh, why? Yeah, like I don't want to be out here. I don't want people to,
What have you
think
done?
weirdly of me or something. So I mean, everybody's got those types of fears.
Right, right. And it's happened to me before where I've stepped out front because there's like a leadership vacuum, right? So if you see something and it's not being handled, or you're constantly in meetings that are twice as long as they need to be, then I'd rather get involved and try to, fill in, I suppose. But
Yeah,
yeah,
for the greater good.
just for everybody. Yeah. For
Yeah.
everybody.
So so why a relationship book, and why a marriage book?
Well,
Why did that come up?
it's been an interesting creative detour for me because I'm a nonfiction TV producer. I worked for National Geographic and the Discovery Networks and Smithsonian Network, Oprah Winfrey's company for a while. And I think when you get into producing for TV like that, you're always looking for a project. And I was spending time, this was years ago when I started to think about this book, where my husband and I had spent a lot of time with friends over the holidays and just had like a great time with these different couples. But we're really noticing that they're very different from how we were, and did different things and behaved differently. And so I just got kind of into this idea about what makes a marriage happy. What do people do day to day that makes their marriage happy? And so it started in this real organic place that I talked to my friends and some family, and I found out there were certain commonalities. And the book grew from there, where I talked in the end to couples who have collectively been married for 1,000 years. And so it's all this earned wisdom. And I've kind of been since then in this area of how can we better share wisdom with each other, because we all gain wisdom as we grow and move through our lives, and relationships succeed and relationships fail. And all that stuff is valuable. And the people that I interviewed, I think some were surprised actually how much they liked talking about it, how much they liked being asked about how they'd grown in certain areas of their marriage, and what worked for them and what didn't. And it's just, and that's another reason that I reached out to you, is that I thought you're having these interesting conversations with people about changing, kind of doing a little world changing around you when we are in conversation. And so that's kind of, how some couples are actually using the book as a conversation starter, and it's all in the words of these couples. So I'm not an expert, but I did the interviews, and it's the only book I know of that's really only in the words of married couples about what works for them. There's no therapist, there's no exercises. It's really just kind of a cocktail party of conversation on different ideas.
That's so fascinating, because there are, I like what you talk about this, the what works, because I think that, you say you're no expert, but I believe that in terms of relationships, and particularly with interacting with other individuals, there is this idea that we are all individuals, and what works between two individuals is not going to necessarily, there's no formula to make it work with another person. There are similarities, There are commonalities. I'm sure you found them in your book, sort of like quote unquote rules to how people operate, but the detail of what makes an individual relationship work or get through things is highly individual. And I think, I would think there's a lot to be gained from reading other people's, reading about other people's journeys, right? And
yes.
What are some of the standout things that you saw in your, I don't know, can I call it research?
Interviews, in my interviews.
Okay.
I guess. Yeah. It's interesting, because one of the big themes of the book is just how marriage is a verb. It's a noun, of course, but it's really an action. And that's why the book is called Making Marriage Happy, because you're making it that way. It's something that you have to do. And I don't know about you, but I used to sort of look at my parents, or people a generation removed, right? And I think that older generation, maybe they didn't air their dirty laundry or their fights, or they were maybe a little less apt to talk about that stuff. But I sort of assume most people were pretty happy and didn't struggle anymore after they'd been together for a long time. And it turns out you are always kind of, that there's, certain behaviors that your partner might have that you never really get used to, you never really like, you never really embrace, but they're not going to change. So you just have to live with it, right? Or, you go through something that is outside of your control, like a pandemic, or a work situation, or a health scare, or something like that. And so the relationship's changing all the time. And so the people who are successful at it are the ones who kind of constantly have their eye on it and know that I'm changing, my partner's changing, and you got to get up every morning and do it again, because it'll get away from you if you take your eye off it. Yeah.
The care and feeding of relationships, like the care and feeding of plants, right? The interesting point you bring out there is changing, right? So each of us is changing through time, as in our own selves, right? We are changing in our minds, we're changing in our experiences, we're changing in our bodies. Yeah. And then you put another person there who's also changing, perhaps at a different rate in some ways. And it seems like there has to be some way to, like a transmission in a car, right? You've got these two things moving at different rates in different ways. You have to figure out how to bring them together. What are some tactics that you saw when people talked about how to bring those things together?
One is just being intentional about being together. And one thing that I really like is that this idea of saying yes to your partner came up. So we've all done this, you've probably done this at home too, where you say to your spouse, let's go for a walk after dinner. And they're like, ooh, it's like, all right, that doesn't make you feel good. It's like, tell me, say yes. And, when you get an invitation from your partner to do something, even if you don't really want to do it, maybe there's a reason to go along. Maybe there's a reason to be in each other's company. So say yes to each other when you can. Try to embrace some of their interests. And if you haven't tried it, then go along. give that a try. Have you ever had that experience where you were like, you didn't really want to go along, but you did, and it was more fun than you thought?
I'm going to say yes. However, I will put this caveat on it that I found, and I mean, full disclosure here, like I'm on the tail end of a 20-year relationship.
Wow.
And right. And it was several years in the making for its demise. And I've learned a lot through that because
Yeah,
from my experience, we were kind of always the couple who had it all together, which is a lot of pressure.
it is.
If you see it as pressure, right? Or if you can just push it off and say, I'm not your role model, then you relieve that pressure a bit. But I've kind of played the role model to some degree, right? Which then necessitates covering all, not speaking. Like when people say, "Hey, how are you?" It's like, "Great," because
Yeah.
what else are you going to say?
Right.
But my personality was such, probably still is to some degree, that I'm happy to be there. Like, happy, let's go along, let's do something. And sometimes to a fault, right? Which might be considered some level of codependency, right?
Okay.
Well, if I don't, then it's almost like this fear of missing out or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm always interested in trying something new as well. So that's just kind of like, hey, let's do it.
That's good.
And I think that led to, I think, a lot of positivity
Yes.
in our relationship. I thought that was really good. However, and I'll put this, the kind of the comma on that when people don't do that, that leads to loneliness. And when people aren't willing to communicate how important something is, hey, it's super important that you be there, then that leads to a significant amount of loneliness. And if that loneliness remains unspoken, you have a major problem on your hands.
Yes, for sure. And that really comes up. There's a specific section of the book where you have to tell the truth. So you're going to talk. People, it's like communication is so important. That's the bedrock of it. But you actually also have to tell the truth. And sometimes you don't want to tell the truth that your partner's not going to want to hear, right? And that's the tricky part, is that you always have to take care of yourself during all these changes that we're living through, with your partner by your side, as trying to take care of them through whatever needs they might have. And it's a big job. It's a very big job. And I think that the couples that I spoke to, the happier ones, nobody was going to tell you it was easy. And they were also going to tell you it was very imperfect. That's another thing. Is like, it is not perfect. There's a whole I did a whole chapter on gift giving, right? Which I think can be a real series of landmines for some couples. And
how so?
Well, there's this like big burden of expectation, right? On a special birthday, or you can't miss an anniversary, or for some couples it doesn't matter, and they're actually okay with nothing. But for others, the gifts really mean something. And there's a story of this one woman who, and sometimes there's big fails and sometimes there's big success. So there's one guy who tells the story of how his wife really wanted diamond earrings, and he didn't think it was really that important, but he was like, all right, maybe I'll get them for her. And he started to look, and he was like, well, these are very expensive. And he wasn't, he got some, but he got these very small ones. And then when his wife opened it up, she was like significantly disappointed, and told him so, and said, these are for a child or a baby. Which is like big fail. So he thought, and then he also at that moment like realized this meant something to her. This was a meaningful gift that he'd kind of like let her down. And he talks about how he kind of had to go back and get right with what it was going to cost, and get her the earrings that she wanted, because it meant something to her, And then he actually threw a party for her on her sort of half birthday, I think it was, and gave her these earrings that made her really happy. And it's like, it's not necessarily a story that you're going to hear in the run of conversation, because
Right.
you know, you're not going to say what's some of your big fails in life. And I think reading about, you know, these confessions and big things that people have gotten wrong or had to learn from, those are some of the most instructive.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it goes along with the idea, and people give lip service to this, but living it is an entirely different thing. The idea that you learn more from failure than you ever do from success.
Yeah.
And it's very true. And I think that is a skill to develop, particularly in relationships, of learning from the failure and unpacking, I think, the truth, right? And you talk about, you mentioned just a little bit ago this idea that you have to speak your truth.
Mm.
And I think sometimes that's complicated because I think at times people don't know what the truth is. And, you know, when we are working through some of these times of transitions, and I know I'm painting this big we, right?
Yeah.
So I know, and I'll speak for myself, I know the times I've gone through certain transitions in my head where I didn't know what I felt or what I wanted or what I needed. It was confusing to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that one of the challenges in relationships is trying to make things concrete, right? Because there's a steadiness that if we could figure this out, if we could resolve this, then we can put it to bed. It's like putting the Jenga pieces right together.
Yeah.
And
it'll never come up again.
Right. Exactly. Instead of it's almost like a self-respect thing first, to say, hey, you know, I'm in transition, I don't know. And then allowing, and then as a partner, allowing your partner to be in that transition, say, I don't know. And being able to get to the being able to voice messy things, right? So there's this gets back into somebody told me one point in time, the conversation you're unwilling to have is currently controlling your relationship.
Oh, that's a good one.
And it is so true. It is absolutely so true. The conversation someone is unwilling to have is controlling the relationship, because the dance that one must take to move around that conversation is intense, right? And it leads to a I know this is not a word, but a miscreation. It creates things that aren't real.
Yeah.
That are smoke and mirrors to prevent the conversation from being had. People call it shadow work and all sorts of stuff. The things we hide, repress, or deny, and we try and figure out how to hide, repress, and deny that to ourselves in many cases, and certainly to the world. Well, you know, I think it seems to me that like level 2 in relationships, or maybe even level 3, is to have those conversations. It's like, I don't even know how to have this conversation, and I don't even know what I really think or what I really feel, but I just need you to be in that space. Can you sit with me while I think this stuff through?
Yep.
And that is a level of intensity, and I think a level of vulnerability that people disregard as so important. And when they come upon it, immediately are repelled by that and say, whoa, that's too much, looking for the exit sign.
Right. What you're saying reminds me of a comment from one guy who's been married for a couple decades, and he talks about how he and his wife just need a lot of talk time together every day. And that's not in itself going to prevent you from having an argument or coming up against something that you disagree on, or, you know, and the way he described it was, the better I understand her, the more I might understand why she does something the next day that I don't like or don't agree with. I might understand better why she did that. And that's maybe a way, for me, that was a fresh way to think about it, right? Because you're right that we don't know. We don't know. There's a whole chapter in the book on conflict and how you argue. We're not taught this stuff. We should be, but we're not. And then what you do when you get married is you have these two people from two different upbringings, where their parents handled money differently and fighting differently and probably religion different, all kinds of different things. And you're supposed to come together and, it's very, very challenging. And so that's why the part of knowing yourself and knowing your, working as hard as you can to know and understand your partner and honor who they are, that's really kind of where a lot of that work of marriage, that phrase that gets used, it's a lot of work. That's kind of what I dug out of it, is that day-to-day truth telling and acceptance of this person. And there might be things that you have to accept that are disappointing. Your spouse might not tick all your boxes, as it turns out, and you might not find that until you're several years down the road. But what are you going to do? I mean, are you ticking every single one of their boxes? That's
Right.
a very hard thing to expect from each other, right?
It is.
It's a
Yeah.
big burden. Yeah.
You've got a lot of wisdom there. This idea of the what was I was thinking of it like in military.
Yeah.
Right? There are like rules of engagement. These are the rules of how we work through conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And deciding on those rules and definitions, I think is kind of important. Like I was having a conversation with my daughter the other day. We had a great conversation about some recent political stuff, right?
Okay.
She's 15, she's got her own thoughts and ideas, and I respect that's totally fine. But she is all at the same token, she is 15 and I'm 43, and I've lived like multiples of lifetimes on top of her.
Right.
So
better, obviously. But
in certain circumstances, it's like you don't even know how this works, but
right.
and so we're going head to head on this stuff, right? And what I've been trying to teach her in kind of having some of these discussions is the idea of healthy arguments.
Yeah.
That you can have an opinion, you can vocalize that opinion in a strong way.
Mm-hmm.
And still be respectful of the other person. And she uses the term like, hey, you're yelling at me. I'm like, no. Or you're arguing, right? And it's like, well, who told you the arguments are not right? There's a book. It's a great book called the Rule Book to Arguments.
Nice.
But even the word argument, it's a loaded term, but to argue your case, mm-hmm. argue why you believe something and what you believe about it is a skill. Mm-hmm. And it's a learned skill that some people in certain professions have to go through. But we as young folks don't go through those things. We're not trained. We don't go through a class until you get into law school or something like that of how to put an argument together.
Right.
And so then, like to your point, is like we get into these relationships where we have completely different backgrounds and all we bring is our feelings. Right? It's just like, I'm going to throw this bucket of feelings on you. And they're like, right?
Which always feels really good. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Instead of agreeing on certain definitions and agreeing of kind of our rule book of how we're going to engage, which could include all sorts of things, but it's where do you begin if you've never had that sort of training? Because people don't go through relationship training, which they probably should.
Right. I mean, there may be a few people that I talked to who had if they were married in a church, they would meet with their pastor a couple times. But most of them were like, oh no, we didn't, we should have, but we didn't know anything. And that's a lot of the trial and error that I think is really heartening to read about in these experiences, because there's just something reassuring that it's not easy for everybody. It's not easy for anyone. It's just not easy. And to pretend that it is really does it a disservice. To say, oh, we never fight, or we never, I think there's certain areas like money that couples learn to understand each other on, that they legitimately don't fight about certain things anymore because they have been able to grow and mature with each other in a way that brought them together. But nobody is saying at all. In fact, they're all quite relieved to say how imperfect it is. And it can still be happy. I mean, it can still bring a lot of happiness, but there's a kind of a reality that they understand about what their relationship can and can't do for them.
Yeah.
Because it can't be everything. You know, when you're in love and dating and all that stuff, I mean, that honeymoon, you know, that's amazing, but that doesn't last, obviously. So then what does it look like? You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's very hard to say because a lot of people aren't talking about it. Or they're pretending that there isn't anything wrong and there's nothing that they struggle with. And I don't know why we're, you know, you don't want to go out and bicker in public, but I don't know why I think some people are kind of pretending that it's bliss and easy and doesn't sort of change from day to day and year to year.
Yeah, that's true. The idea of pretending and then not having arguments.
Yeah.
Legitimately not having arguments is a real red flag to any relationship. It's the right. It's the if there's nothing to be passionate about that you believe in, then are you the same person? Have you suddenly stumbled upon the exact same conclusions on everything? Because that's not possible.
Right.
Right.
It's not interesting, right? It's also not
interesting. That's totally true. It's not interesting, but then on the flip side, right, is when everything becomes an argument, that's a red flag too, right? There's some deeper hidden need there that's not being talked about, that is being masked by all of the surface stuff. Like, well, are we going to have pizza or not for dinner? Is probably not. Nobody's arguing about whether to have pizza or not. There's something different. You know, there's something deeper. You brought up gifts earlier. Have you done this thing with like love languages and that type of stuff? And people talked about that.
People brought that 5 Love Languages book is very popular. A lot of people have read it, and I think continues to be like huge seller. And it's not a new book, right? It's been around for I think 20 years, maybe. Gary Chapman, I believe, right?
I think so.
Yeah, and that helps a lot of couples figure out what's your love language. Is the kind of, you know, do you like gifts? Do you like acts of service? I don't know if you know. Do you know the 5?
Gifts, acts of service, physical touch, time, quality time.
Oh, okay. Is
and
words one? Maybe words or
words of affirmation? Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
There we go.
We got them.
Yeah. Well, I went through the 5 love languages thing at one point in time, and in fact, during that time, I found out that my wife liked flowers. Or sorry, that's not true. She liked gifts. Gifts was her like number one thing.
Yeah.
And in my mind, the trouble that it created, and I don't know that we ever did a good job resolving it, was gifts. Got to buy more stuff.
Mm-hmm.
In my mind, is more stuff creates more stuff that is just more stuff.
Right.
And I'm already overwhelmed with the amount of stuff. So how can we buy more stuff? And then on top of that, it was like, well, you know, what woman doesn't like flowers?
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out some people don't, but never mind that. I would buy flowers. I would, as a young guy, I would buy flowers. Why? My dad always did that, you know, and I thought that was a great thing to do. And it's nice, right?
Yeah.
And not all the time, because I don't want to keep buying something that's dead already, right? So I might, right? I mean, that's my guy mind. So I kind of got through that. But what I discovered was that in my buying flowers, I was missing the flower that was apparently very important, which was the tulip.
Oh dear.
And and so I was doing myself a bit of a disservice every time I thought I was doing something good.
Oh.
By doing something I thought I was excelling at. But actually was doing a disservice. So not only was I not buying the right flower, but I was buying the wrong flower, which is like a double bad. And that's a problem. Right?
That's a tough one,
It is. It's a tough one.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where people come at it with different perspectives. How do you meet in the middle?
Yeah.
And to what degree another person needs to be needed or wanted or affirmed, right?
Yeah.
Then you're in, you know, you're skating on thin ice there. by taking an action that you thought you were doing. And there was a saying, and I saw this on a wall at one point in time, something like you hurt when you love someone, but you don't know how they need to be loved, you hurt them or something. That's a total paraphrase of whatever I saw, and I know I butchered it. But there is this idea that when you go off and you care or love someone ignorantly, sometimes you're harming. And that's where I think this idea of conversation, it's so important for us individually to really know and take care of ourselves and understand ourselves so well outside of another individual.
Yeah.
That we can explain that to another person, and then be so comfortable in ourselves on the other side, be so comfortable in ourselves and knowledgeable about ourselves that I'm not harmed by you speaking your truth to me. Right. And then having I think an intense curiosity to understand that person and know them well. Because if we don't know, if we can't communicate on one side and we're not willing to listen on the other side and create a safe space for listening, we're in for a harder time than is necessary. And I think hard times are necessary. That's the other thing. Yeah. I don't think hard times and skating through life is I don't think that's the way it's supposed to be. I think we need those hard times to knock off the stuff that shouldn't be there in our lives and focus us down on what matters. I think we only get that through difficulty.
I think you're right about what really matters, right? And one of the women in the book says too that they sort of did this love language thing, and it was very valuable to them. And she also liked a physical gift. That was really what her main love language was. And she's like, but I let my husband know. It's like, if he just stops to buy me a candy bar on the way home from work, that makes me happy. You know what I mean? So I think it's sort of that constant recognition again of what really makes you tick, and then what makes the other person tick, and then how you can help each other through that constantly dynamic and changing thing. Because what I liked 10 years ago, I don't, some stuff I don't care about anymore.
Right.
Right. It's just, forget it. It's always going to be the work, but hopefully it's a joyful, interesting thing. And then one of the quotes that I like best that somebody said was, to me, the purpose of marriage is helping each other become better selves. And I think if you're looking at that, which is how can we help each other, that you're both kind of self-interested and other interested and interested in how you both are together. That really resonated with me in terms of, because I wanted, to me, growing and changing and learning and experiencing is what makes life. That's life. That's what makes us all sort of grow and change in, I think, a good, really fulfilling way. And if your partner can help you along with that, that's another theme that comes out is that's kind of becomes a superpower. If you have somebody who's as interested in, for example, people mentioned that they're with the help of their spouse, they've been able to go back to graduate school. They've run marathons. They've done all these things in their lives that they probably wouldn't have otherwise, because they had that kind of help and encouragement. And again, it's just a sort of another facet of why it's a relationship that makes them happy, because again, it's a happy individual inside, a growing happy individual with help is a big part of what made happy life for these couples.
Yeah, absolutely. It's complicated. Relationships are complicated.
It's complicated.
It's so difficult, and I think some people. I don't know if did you find in any of your interviews are some people more naturally disposed, or are relationships easier for certain people or personalities than others, or is this sort of universal trouble for everyone?
I think that that's a good question. I think there are some people who have a little more chemistry, a little more natural. They're more entertained by their partner over the years, for example, or they still laugh at each other's jokes and think they're, funny. But there were some people that were very kind of clear-eyed about that. This was a couple that was aligned on the goals that they had in life, that they wanted to raise a family, that they wanted to seek out the good over short-term happiness. That this one couple, for example, had a whole kind of like a contract as very young people. I think they must have had some help with this, but really about intentionally what they wanted their marriage to be like. Imagine if everybody did that before they got married. I don't even know what that would have looked like for me, but it's an interesting thing to think about and to take that seriously rather than, let's go to Vegas. I mean, it's a different way of approaching it. And so I think the ones that were very intentional and clear-eyed about, these are our goals and this is what we're working toward in life, that was a big help.
Yeah, I think everybody needs, I did some team building back in the day at the local camp for the YMCA. And it's pretty clear there are a handful of ways you can bring a team of disparate people together who are, just jacking off at the beginning of the day, and you want to have a successful team.
Yeah.
You only need a couple things. One is a goal to shoot for, right? And it could be any dumb goal. I mean, I had people circle up, hey, circle up, right? And some people would circle up and they kind of take forever to kind of get in the circle. And then some joker's off in the distance and he's not doing anything. He's resistant. And I say, I think you guys can do you think you guys can do this faster. And so you could put the goal of time out there, and all of a sudden, boom, you get the whole group moving, and all of a sudden it becomes self-policing, right? So the Joker is also bringing in there. He doesn't want to let the team down. Somebody else said, hey, would you speed this up, right? For what? Just because me as some rando team builder said, circle up, I think you can do it faster. You set the goal out there and you can bring people together, and then something to fight against. So here's the things we're fighting against as a group, right? And then I think the third thing was that I took away from that those team building exercises is, what are the rules? And if you allow the team to set the rules together, then those rules will stick. And it seems to me that if I look back in those times, there were times where we might have missed a rule to begin with, right? And we're like, well, hey, do we want to? Somebody says, hey, you shouldn't be doing that. Okay, well, would you like? Let's circle up. Do we think we should add this to a rule, right? And then it becomes a discussion. But the imperfect team, a bunch of imperfect people with totally different needs and desires, what to get out of the day, end up at the end of the day pretty much working together. And that's
had a good time doing it, probably.
Absolutely, had a great time and had a lot of interesting experiences. And I know it's a microcosm of the real world because they came there and then they left. But the dynamics I think that are at work there are applicable to any time people get together. Give them a goal, give them something to fight against, and give them the rules. Ta-da! You can do great things with that, which is really a process in the mind, not a process necessarily from the heart. And I think that's where people maybe get a little bit lost in relationships. This is a process of thinking, not a process of feeling in throughout much of that relationship.
Yeah. I think that's right. And it's interesting to learn about like techniques that couples use, like what you're talking about. There are house rules about potentially how they fight or the way they get together, that they make it intentional, that they have a date night or some time alone away from the kids on a regularly scheduled basis that nothing will interfere with, period. Different practices that again, they have decided these are our house rules. This is what works for us. And they're sacrosanct. They just aren't questioned. And because they work for this couple, they might not work for you. They might not work for me, but that was sort of the point, is to sort of dig around and go, do they have rules? A lot of them do. And there's one couple that goes to Paris every year for a trip. They go back to Paris. They stay in the same hotel because they want to get away to someplace. But it's I think the guy called it a morale building event. Like everything but the whiteboard. But just really like to talk about their relationship. They get away to this place that they know they love. There's not a great deal of pressure to go explore and find new things, but they really do it so that they can spend a week with each other talking about what's going well, what's going badly, what our goals are. Do we want to, big goals with more kids or retirement or whatever. And so again, a lot of people, I think, they don't know that's how couples approach their marriage. I hadn't heard of that from any specific couple, but I was like, well, that makes a ton of sense. And maybe something like that, probably not Paris, but maybe that would work for us. Maybe we could dedicate a weekend every year to something like that. And so that's kind of what I hope that the book does for people, is like hearing other people's, the way that they've organized their lives in a way that makes them happy, that's successful for them. There might be something there that helps other people.
Yeah. I know for us, on our anniversary, we'd go out for dinner, or sometimes we'd leave and go someplace else. But we had early into our relationship, I had a concept of making a journal that we would just like record what we do each year.
Oh,
and
nice.
So we had one journal we write down. We'd rehash the year over dinner and just write down everything. And we kind of take turns. I have terrible handwriting and she had good handwriting, or has good handwriting. And then she would write some stuff and I'd write some stuff. But it was just this idea of refreshing the entire year. What were the standouts, and pulling back memories, which then in that place and time, the things that we would forget, right?
Yes.
Things that I, without rereading that journal, I have no idea what's in it. I could pinpoint a handful of big topics, but it was like little things, like a kid did this, or, oh, remember when we went there, or those people went, this is what happened.
Mm-hmm.
I think having some sort of written record, I think is important in relationships, instead of just letting things fly by. I do have a personal curiosity. If I were to compare and contrast certain relationships that I know, I think that some of simplifying, or maybe even oversimplifying some concept, and I'm curious if you took anything from this as I talk about this. There are some relationships I look at and I think it's them against the world, right?
Mm.
It's like it's just us, and we've got our protected time, and we've got our protected space, and sometimes we disappear and nobody knows where we're at and that type of stuff. And then there are some people where it's like us and the world. So it's like they're always on Facebook, they're always on social media, they're always posting things. Have you seen any similarities or dissimilarities in this idea of us against the world, or us and the world, and how that's played out in those relationships that you've interviewed?
That's interesting. I don't think I ever thought of it in those terms, one or the other. Certainly, though, the us against the world is a little bit more resonant for me, based on the conversations I had, because that was part of the commitment, is that this relationship comes first. And we can open ourselves up to all sorts of other things, but when we get to a point where something is going to impact the relationship, or we realize that it's bad, we're going to address that. We're just not going to let that impact, us for the worse. So I think, though, it's very much personality based. There were a lot of people that talked about, they have a lot of individual friends. The guy goes off, with his friends to do stuff, and the woman has her nights with her friends. And that's wonderful for their marriage. Other people talk about this one long married couple. I think they've been married almost 50 years now. They're just at a point where they only like each other. They don't really want to hang out with anybody else anymore. So, that's the other extreme. And, some people talk a lot about their work problems with their spouse. Other people say, I have my work friends that I talk about my work stuff with, and I don't want to bring that home. So I think it's a very individual, whatever it is you can tolerate kind of an answer. But I do think that what I saw in common was a commitment to keep the relationship in first place. And
Gotcha.
when something would occur to threaten it, then attention was paid.
That makes sense. Yeah. Well, this is, I mean, super fascinating discussion for sure, and so valuable.
Time flies.
I know it is. Time has flown. We are over our normal time. If you've got time, I'm happy to stay online here. I think it's time. I mean, relationships are always timely, but I think relationships right now are particularly threatened because of the amount of noise, background noise. And when we have background noise, I think it's hard to filter out what the real tune is, right?
Yes.
And right now we've got a technological capacity where everybody's talking all the time. And I mean, I don't know if you go to Reddit at all, but people ask questions on Reddit and other places about their relationships, and it's like the answer is go talk to the person who you're in a relationship with. Stop talking to the thousands of random people, who all have their own opinions and are talking about their own filters with their own right. And there's an immediacy, there's a soundbite issue I think we have, which is why I appreciate your book so much, that you would go through and distill it down into not sound bites, but an adequate explanation, right? Which is just not what we have. We don't have that with Twitter. We don't have it with Facebook. Yeah. It's like you don't know the whole story. You wasn't an interview. It's just like, I wanted to complain about this little thing, and then everybody's like, what's going on? I was talking to a friend the other day, and he said he just finds it funny that he will just post, he will repost something that somebody said, right? And he does this just to get people jazzed up. But he'll repost something that somebody said with him just going like this.
Okay.
And he says he says immediately, boom, people will be polarized, and some people will be arguing for whatever that post was. Some people argue. He says I didn't give any inclination of what I thought. All I did was post a picture, right? And that's the nature I think that we have in our relationships now, or we are developing, I think, in relationships where we're talking. We've developed this like immediate response, short, quick response, instead of settling into we're going to push all the noise away. We're just going to sit there, like you talked about, for a weekend, and just sit with no noise, and it's just us, and protecting that space on a more routine basis.
Well, and a lot of our conversations too now, it's got this: if you're not for me, you're against me, kind of like your friend's post is brilliant, because it's really, it's this invitation to choose a side, right?
Yeah.
And people are totally willing to do it. And the truth is that I think in a mature relationship, you have to have many sides. Our brains can handle more than two choices.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, you can believe that your partner's wrong about something, but that their intention is not bad, or that they haven't read the same things that you have, or they didn't live through the same experience you did as a child, or for we can require a little more of ourselves, I think, than what you're saying, which is like, let's just get to the heart of it, and TV's all about the bites. You're right, but I think that comes at the expense of really sharing kind of nuanced, learned wisdom that actually helps us get along better together in a world where it is all about relationships. And the better potentially you handle your relationships at home, the more energy you have for the relationships outside and in your work. And so I think there's a lot of truth that we really shortchange ourselves when we don't sit down and kind of have the in-person conversation and confess your stuff and quit acting perfect. It's not, but part of the mess is really what makes us human. It's not, pretending it's not there doesn't do any good.
Right. Yeah. I've been listening to a lot of psychologists recently, and I have a a proclivity to listening to, psychological stuff and relationship stuff and whatnot. And and one individual was talking about how when we don't say something or when we push something down, feelings or whatever in ourselves, it doesn't go away. It just sits there and comes back with a vengeance. And those are his words. Comes back with a vengeance later. And I was like, that's very true.
It comes back, and this time it's angry. It's pissed.
Right. Exactly.
You left it in its cage too long.
Well, as we're winding down on our time together here, you talked about playing a game beforehand. You still got time for a game?
I love a game. Yeah. If we have time, that'd be great.
Yes, absolutely. Let's do this. We're going to play Whatchamadraw It. I'm going to throw up on the screen here. And if you have played Whatchamadraw It before, I don't know that you have, but if you've seen Whatchamadraw It before, you'll see that this is a drawing game. And here's how it's going to work. I'm going to put on the screen a phrase. So the phrase will be something like this: draw a frog sitting in a canoe headed for a waterfall. And you and I will each have 1 minute to draw that phrase. And then we will vote on who wins that particular drawing.
I'm bad at drawing, so my expectations are pretty low. So
okay. Well,
winning isn't everything.
This is your opportunity to get better.
Okay. All right. I'll try.
All right. Are you ready for our first one?
I'm ready.
Okay. Draw an animal that has a chicken head, a pineapple body, and duck feet.
Oh boy.
Draw an animal that has a chicken head, pineapple body, and duck feet.
I did just cut up a pineapple the other day. That'll help. Oh, good. There's a clock.
Yes, there is a clock. Chicken head, pineapple body.
Duck feet.
Oh, this is not going well.
The head, I mean, oops. I might have just drawn body parts on here by accident. It's neither male nor female, by the way.
It's an androgynous chicken?
Yeah.
I don't know how to draw a pineapple.
I don't know how to draw a chicken head.
I think I've got I don't know. We'll see.
Oh no.
That's it. It's over.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. I'll because I suckered you into this, I'll put mine on the screen first here.
Ooh, that's pretty nice.
That is an animal with a chicken head, a pineapple body, and duck feet. I just don't know about that chicken head. I think
it's pretty good. That's pretty good.
All right, well, you're up. Let's see what you got. Oh, see, now that is a good pineapple.
Is it?
And those are duck
when
feet.
I started to draw the things on, I was like, that looks wrong, right?
Nope. I think that's pretty spot on. I would see that was a pineapple. I would not see that mine's a pineapple by any stretch.
I started with the pineapple. Oh, is it side by side now?
So this.
Okay.
Yeah. See yours. Yeah.
But a chicken beak isn't that long, is it? Yours is pretty good.
It's not. I got to give you the win though, because your pineapple and duck feet. I don't know what my feet are, but they're not duck feet.
Yours look like human feet.
Exactly. That's true. They did. They totally did look like human feet.
They did. All
right. Let's we'll pop this back on the screen here. We've got our second one coming up here.
Okay.
So I'm gonna vote for you on the first one.
I'll take it. All right. That's your show. I mean, you got to make the rules. I just respect,
Who are you voting for? You can vote for yourself, by the way. Who are you going to vote for?
Well, I would vote for you, sir.
Oh, well, you can vote for yourself. It's totally fine. All right. Here we go. Second one.
Okay.
Draw an animal, that doesn't say animal. Playing with butterfly wings.
Oh dear. Do you make these up?
No, I absolutely do not. These are from a game called Whatchamadraw It.
Oh, that's an actual game.
It is totally an actual game.
Oh. Oh dear. Okay. I don't really know how to start this one.
Oh, I don't know.
30 seconds.
What? Oh no. Oh dear.
Oh no, this isn't. Oh, I'm not certain that this went well.
I don't have this one at all.
Well, don't think that I have it.
2.
Oh no.
This has got to be the worst drawing I've ever done. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I went first the first time. You got to go first the second time.
Oh, it's embarrassing. All right.
Oh,
I started
no,
with the plane. I don't
that's
know.
pretty good.
I don't know.
I could see that it's a plane. I could also see that it's trying to be a butterfly.
It's trying. It's
Okay, you ready?
Metamorphosing.
You ready for what happened here? Good.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Oh. What's its goal? What's the target area there?
Well,
what's it flying toward?
I was going to draw the plane like looking up at it so I could draw butterfly wings, and then I thought, no, I have to draw it in like 3 dimensions.
Yeah.
And I started the one on the right there.
I like how it has fire coming out the back too.
It's supposed to be a tail.
Oh.
It's not fire. See?
Because planes have fire coming out the back, don't they? I mean, that's logical.
Yes, if your airliner has fire coming out the back, you know you're doing something.
Not a problem. Yeah. You know you're going fast.
And my wings turned out like butts, so I don't even know. Not sure what happened. I got to give you the win on that too.
That was a very hard one. But I did like yours. I like these.
Yeah, you're going to vote for yourself, though, aren't you?
I'll vote for myself. Yeah.
I would too. If there's no self-respect. Yes, it is. Well, no self-respecting person would vote for whatever it is I was trying to draw. You even said it. What's the fire in the back? Like, that's not fire.
Oh well.
All right, third one. Ready?
Okay. Yep.
Draw a drum playing tiger, a guitar playing porcupine, and a piano playing skunk.
I can't even draw one of those things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm drawing my tiger. What's he playing? He's playing a drum.
Oh no. Oh, my tiger's playing the piano.
He's not supposed to be playing the piano.
Well, he's a rule breaker. Drum playing tiger skunk. This is very ambitious for 1 minute. I don't know what
really ambitious.
We are.
Oh, a porcupine. All right.
10 seconds.
Oh, shoot.
3.
Oh, no.
2. 1.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
This was impossible.
I've played this Whatchamadraw game time and time again, and I don't think I've ever drawn something as poorly. This is off the charts terrible.
Okay, let's see. You're gonna have to remind me though. I still don't know if it's a skunk, a raccoon, and a tiger.
It's a drum playing tiger, A guitar playing porcupine. In fact, here's what I can do.
Oh,
I have
guitar
a
playing.
little trick I can do here.
Yeah.
All right, so
Okay.
it's a drum playing tiger, guitar playing porcupine, and a piano playing skunk. And boom.
What's that? The drum playing, that one has like lips.
That's his mouth. It's his mouth, and he's angry. He was trying to be angry because he's a tiger. He's playing the drum. And then the amorphous porcupine, which looks an awful lot like some sort of slug or prickly worm, is playing the left-handed guitar.
Oh yeah, I see it. I see it.
Only
it's
because I do it
abstract, but I
backwards.
like it's very sort of Picasso-esque, that one. I think you captured the spirit of the porcupine. How's that?
Very kind of you. It's very kind. Well, you're up here. I totally missed the piano playing skunk, so I
did it wrong from the beginning. So I have a tiger playing the piano, which wasn't even required. And then the skunk is playing the drums. And you can see that he smells.
He looks like a fox.
I know.
But that does look like a cat playing the piano.
He's playing the piano. It's an upright. They're doing a jam session.
Yeah, that is a great piano. Seriously, it's pretty classy.
Well, I don't know, but you have to win because I didn't follow the rules. The tiger's not supposed to.
I didn't follow the rules either. I missed out on somebody.
All right.
So it's a draw on that.
Maybe that one's a draw. Okay. All right.
Which means that you go away with 3 points and I go away with 1.
Woo! It's nice to be. That makes your guests feel good. If you let me win.
I don't try to lose. I don't play games to lose. Just so you know. There's never a thought in my mind that's like, hey, let's play this game so I can lose.
But you know what? You're leaving me feeling like I've accomplished something today. And, and with my new friend, Jason, over coffee.
Absolutely.
So mission accomplished.
So good. Well, people can get in contact with you at clairevandepolder.com.
Claire Vande Polder.
Claire. I said that right?
I think you said Clan Vande Polder. They're my Scottish ancestors, but I just go by Claire now.
I'm moving too fast.
I know you got business. You got to wrap the show up. I get it.
ClaireVandePolder.com. Yes. Well, your book, Making Marriage Happy. Where can people pick that up?
It's everywhere. It's online. Amazon, Barnes and Noble. You can order from your indie shops. So yeah, Making Marriage Happy.
Awesome. Well, Claire, this is really, I think, and I truly do mean this, I think it's a fascinating conversation, one that is totally worth having. And I love the concept of your book of interviewing other people instead of purporting to be some sort of expert. Let's hear from other people, because I think it's so important that other people at least know that that they're not alone, right? And their relationships are just, transport that to somebody else's life and they got the same thing going on. So
absolutely. And we can learn from each other and feel better, feel less alone for sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks,
great
Jason.
to know you.
It was fun.
All right. Well, to all our viewers and listeners, this is Coffee with Humans. Go to coffeewithhumans.com if you want to have coffee with me. Also, be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel and share on your social media. We'll see you next time.
One of the things I love about Coffee with Humans are the raw conversations I get to have, meeting new people just like you. If you or someone you know should be on Coffee with Humans, go to coffeewithhumans.com. Remember, the only rule is no sales calls.
This has been Coffee with Humans. Subscribe to get updates or click to have coffee with me. coffeewithhumans.com.